Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, be honest with me for a second. Have you ever completely fooled yourself into believing something that just absolutely wasn't true? Maybe you saw what you wanted to see? Well, today we're going to look at 4 incredibly intense stories from literary history that act as a perfect mirror for human psychology. We are diving deep into that fascinating and honestly sometimes dangerous gap between appearance and reality. Whether it's the lies we tell ourselves just to survive grief, or the shiny objects that completely trick us into making terrible choices, literature really holds up a magnifying glass to the human mind.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting stories that shape us, coping with deep loss, the trap of appearances, mercy versus the law, and finally, the price of freedom. Now, while these distinct tales come from completely different eras and authors, they all brilliantly connect to our central theme of how humans drastically misjudge reality. Let's get into it.
So, before we really begin, I want you to ask yourself this direct question. If you were low on cash, would you choose a beautifully colored, absolutely mesmerizing jar for your window or a pair of practical, much-needed shoes? Keep your answer in the back of your mind, because this exact dilemma is going to anchor the decision-making process we'll be analyzing today.
Section 1. Coping with Deep Loss. Let's look at Mr. Modi by Rahadabir.
The story kicks off with a profound and sudden separation. 17-year-old Amin announces to his mother, Sanaban, that he is heading off to war. He's got this deep, almost stubborn fascination with fighting, something he inherited from his late father. So he leaves his mother behind in an increasingly empty house, casually promising he'll be back right after training. But for a mother left completely alone, the reality of that absence is an incredibly heavy weight to bear.
Now, observe how Sonaban actually copes with her son's absence. It's fascinating. She transfers all of her fierce maternal protection right onto her son's 12-week-old cockerel Modi. She's out there defending this little bird from angry neighbors, and she absolutely refuses to lend him out to local boys for cockfighting, literally no matter how much cash they offer her. She creates this psychological illusion of control over her deep grief by desperately protecting the one thing her son left behind.
Her attachment runs so deep that when someone asks to borrow the bird, her reply is just simple and powerful: "He is my son." But then, the tragic reality check hits. She wakes up one Monday to find Modi dead. Just like that, the illusion completely shatters. She buries the bird next to her husband's grave, retreats into her quiet house, and just sits on an empty bed, entirely consumed by isolation. Her constructed reality just couldn't hold up against the fragile nature of life. It's a really stark reminder of how our minds will build these elaborate, fragile illusions just to shield us from pain.
Moving right along to Section 2. The Trap of Appearances. Deceptive Exteriors.
Let's talk about Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. Portia's father designed this totally brilliant psychological test from beyond the grave. He wanted to weed out suitors who only valued surface-level wealth, so he created 3 caskets. The gold one promised what many men desire, but, surprise, it held a skull. The silver one promised what the chooser deserved, but held a picture of a fool. It was actually the plain, boring lead casket which demanded the chooser to give and risk everything that held Portia's portrait and the right to marry her. And what's so cool here is how this illustrates a totally universal human flaw. We literally see a wealthy, fully grown Prince of Morocco choosing the gold casket because he just assumes a precious picture must be in a precious metal. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have a 7-year-old girl named Rosamond from Maria Edgeworth's children's story, The Purple Jar. Even though she desperately needs new shoes, she begs her mom for this beautiful purple jar she sees in a chemist's window. So both a mature royal and a young child make completely disastrous choices based purely on alluring appearances.
Well, Rosamond gets a super harsh reality check the exact second she gets her prize home. As soon as she pours the liquid out to put flowers in it, she realizes the jar itself isn't even purple. It's just plain white glass that happened to be filled with dark, terrible-smelling water. And because her mom gave her the choice of only one item for the whole month, Rosamond is left to suffer in worn-out, painful shoes, limping along for weeks. She definitely learned the hard way that all that glitters is not valuable.
All right, Section 3, Mercy versus the Law, a pound of flesh.
The stakes in this next story are absolutely terrifying. We've got a wealthy merchant named Antonio who wants to help his buddy Bassanio woo Portia. But Antonio's money is all tied up at sea, so he signs this incredibly dangerous bond with a moneylender named Shylock. If Antonio can't repay the 3,000 ducat loan in 3 months, the penalty is literal, like a literal pound of flesh cut from Antonio's body.
Antonio agrees, figuring his ships will return with no problem. But of course, reality intervenes. The ships are lost, and the terrifying bond comes due.
So we get to the trial, and Shylock insists on the absolute letter of the law. Portia, who has cleverly arrived disguised as a young male lawyer to defend Antonio, eloquently begs Shylock to just show a little mercy. She tells him mercy blesses both the giver and the receiver. But Shylock is having none of it. He refuses, firmly demanding his lawful penalty. Even the Duke of Venice can't override the established law. Shylock literally readies his knife, and Portia takes one final look at the legal bond.
And boom, here is the climactic twist. Portia uses the very strictness of the law right against Shylock. She stops him at the last possible second and points out the exact wording. There is zero mention of blood in the bond. Therefore, he cannot shed a single drop of Antonio's blood while taking the flesh, or all his own property will be confiscated by the state. The reality of the contract's limitations completely flips the power dynamic, and Antonio's life is saved simply by reading the fine print. Amazing, right?
Which brings us to Section 4, the price of freedom. The story of an hour. You might want to brace yourself, because the emotional whiplash in this one is intense.
Let's walk through those crucial first minutes of Mrs. Mallard's hour. Because she has a very delicate heart condition, her sister Josephine breaks the news to her incredibly gently. Her husband Brentley has been killed in a railroad disaster. Her immediate reaction is exactly what you'd expect: sudden, wild grief. She weeps in her sister's arms and then retreats to her room all alone. She sinks into this armchair, staring out the window at the patches of blue sky, when suddenly this subtle, elusive feeling begins creeping up on her.
But then, something absolutely incredible happens. Her tragic grief begins to completely transform. As she sits there, she recognizes the feeling washing over her and whispers, "Free, free, free." Her vacant stare turns bright and alive. She realizes that yes, she'll cry again when she sees her husband's body, but she's looking at a long procession of years ahead that will belong absolutely 100% to her. No one's will bending hers. The grief has miraculously blossomed into this euphoric realization of self-assertion and utter freedom.
So, she walks out of that room carrying herself like a literal goddess of victory. She is glowing with feverish triumph. But as she reaches the bottom of the stairs, the ultimate twist drops. The front door opens, and in walks Brentley Mallard. He had been nowhere near the scene of the accident and was completely unaware it had even happened. Upon seeing him standing there alive, the shock is just way too much for Mrs. Mallard's weak heart, and she collapses dead.
The doctors show up and officially proclaim she died of heart disease, of a joy that kills. They just assume she was too thrilled to see her husband alive. But we, the readers, know the hidden reality. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder today. Was it really the joy of seeing him? Or was it the crushing, unbearable loss of her newfound freedom that actually stopped her heart? It really goes to show how immensely dangerous the gap between what society expects and the reality of the human mind can truly be. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep